What does it mean to be a leftist these days? And it's not rhetorical. I'd like an answer. I'm not sure myself anymore. But I do believe that I made the flip to full-fledged anarchist. Intellectually, in spirit, not yet by deed. Because I lost my hope in reform in communism, and I do believe that that upcoming deed is being put upon me more forcibly as time goes by. What is wrong with violence? I started hearing more and more like a pesky earworm that won't go away and spreading across the populace like a viral mantra. I don't condone or promote violence, and peaceful protesters. What is this nonsense? Since when does violence need to be condoned or promoted? And if a protest is actually peaceful, then how is it a protest? And, as I just asked, what is wrong with violence? Violence is the cure to most problems. Doesn't anyone remember anymore the ancient truisms of might makes right, or the ends justifies the means? Just one superficial glance at history and anyone could see that for most of the ills faced by humanity, the only solution was a healthy dose of directed, brutal violence. Now, since mainly an American audience will come across this, I'll describe a base American mindset for everyone's general knowledge, and so I can use it as my own highlighted standing ground regarding why I say that there is no problem with violence. So, for Americans, bad equals Hitler, evil equals Nazis. Okay, granted. I don't see validity in that premise, but for argument's sake and the sake of my own example, I'll accept it. During Chancellor Adolf Hitler's rise to power, many people died. No one cared. It wasn't until a few thousand died, some of humanity's greatest philosophers, thinkers, and general philanthropes decided to craft a letter to be sent to Chancellor Hitler. They wrote many good, fine words. However, they only served in gifting Mr. Hitler extra toilet paper. More time passed. More people died. More was born, some suffered, some found prosperity. However, for my argument, and highlighting the American mindset of bad, good, evil, the enemies of Germany, those who were victorious in World War I and imposed the Versailles Treaty on them, chose to focus on the deaths produced by Germany. Well, after a bit more time and a few thousand more deaths, the governors of those states crafted their own message, which was like the one of the great philosophers. However, it had the addition of threat of violence. Just more toilet paper for Mr. Hitler. It was only when those state governors started to understand one of the base natures of humanity and gifted Chancellor Hitler and Germany the same violence, death, and mayhem that they gifted their neighbors, that Germany learned its lesson and took on a more peaceful stance. Violence is the only solution, and it doesn't require promotion or condemnation. Violence simply is. The only thing that violence needs is guidance, to be used logically and strategically. Rage with righteousness and kill beautifully. And all that is hard for me to say, especially since I wanted to be a pacifist after my time at war. But as I found out, pacifism is a luxury and a tool of the bourgeoisie to maintain the status quo. The bourgeoisie, holding state power, love nothing more than a docile population under the illusion of peace. Indeed, peace and quiet for them, torture till death for us. But I'm writing this, I'm making this to explain myself and address those who call themselves anarchists and use violence against the proletarian under the charge petty bourgeoisie. Raging righteously and killing beautifully means knowing your targets. Those who simply call themselves anarchists without any real knowledge of the behind the title use the average person, the proletarian, as a pressure valve. Now that's vulgar rage, which accomplishes nothing more than turning people against us. Anarchists must pick better targets. However, as I asked at the beginning of this, what does it mean to be a leftist these days? Well, Perhaps if I explain how and why I'm enraged, I'll be able to explain what I feel a leftist to be. But first, and to simplify things a bit, the reason why I was a communist, the reason why I'm an anarchist, is because I love Star Trek. Yeah, I know. Silly, right? Not really. I mean, it's absurd to those who don't understand, who don't know Star Trek. However, Star Trek is the perfect running example of an anarchist state with a syndicalist bottom-up hierarchical structure, or anarcho-syndicalism if you prefer. Now, many argue against that viewpoint, although I found that most who do have only a propagandized idea of what communism is, and none know the names of Kropotkin or Malatesta, let alone like Xenon of Kition. And I will not address their programmed visions and imaginings here, except to say, communism isn't a goal. It's a means. Anarchy is the goal. Communism was created over the passing of years by anarchists, labor unions, and various Christian groups, most notably the League of Outlaws, previously the League of the Just, and some from the American Quaker movements. They created communism to bring about anarchy through legislative reforms. They did this because they thought to be kinder and more humane than revolt. So, communism equals reform, anarchy equals revolution, nothing more or less than that. The communist utopia that people talk about is nothing other than anarchy. So, what do I want? I want to live like in Star Trek. I want to fly around space, both inner and outer, fucking hot chicks, smoking weed and experimenting with psychedelics while discovering the nature of existence. That's what I want. Now, what I demand, what I require, what I dictate is the basic requirements that the state must maintain for the needs of humanity without the need for servitude in any way. Well, that is a bit more. Healthcare, shelter, food and water, electricity in the World Wide Web, environmental management, and education must be the fundamental, base required guarantees for humanity and ensured by the state, governed by the proletariat. In this era of human attainment, for the state to deny or restrict such guarantees should be considered nothing less than government-sanctioned torture and or murder. Violence against the citizenry by the state. Violence against the proletariat by bourgeoisie-controlled states under the terms peace and regulatory practices. Quiet under the threat of violence does not mean peace. And this angers me. Living in this world while knowing that a better world is attainable but is not because of a lack of desire angers me. Now, for what enrages me? Violence is being brought upon me by marks of the pen. People are suffering violence, being killed by marks of the pen. This enrages me. In a capitalist society, taking a person's ability to work for a living is murder. Come between someone and their meal. You run the risk of becoming their meal. The elderly die. The elderly are neglected, they're abused, tortured. This enrages me, and it has all been brought about by the tyranny of the pen. Right now, it doesn't matter what day or time of the day you come across these words right now, till this madness has ended. Someone's grandfather or grandmother is at Papa Nicolau in Thessaloniki, swimming in a pool of their own shit, piss, and sweat for at the most 3 hours, because the people who are charged with their care are not ready to care for them. All of that due to the fucking pen. Right now, someone's grandmother or grandfather is dying scared and confused with no one to comfort them. Dying with no one that they love by their side because of marks of a pen. This enrages me. But What enrages me more is disgust. Enraged by personal apathy and weaknesses. I'm disgusted at myself. I see these things, and I know of better ways, yet I've done nothing out of fear of someone's scribblings. And that disgusts me, and I hate myself for it. Fear to act out of fear of losing what I have, while so many have lost everything. I was a soldier, god damn it. And I've done far more for less honorable causes, yet now I must strive with all of my effort to find the will to act against the markings left behind by a small piece of plastic. I find that disgusting, and I'm enraged. I feel about as useful as those damn philosophers and governors sending letters to Chancellor Adolf Hitler. About as useful as someone looking onto a tragic event unfolding right before their fucking eyes and shouting, somebody should do something, which in itself says that they themselves are no one, bereft of personal power and dignity. As useful as someone with a goddamn camera phone in the process of recording corrupt behavior and yelling, hey, what are you doing? Stop what you're doing. What you're doing is illegal. Yeah. As useful as shouting angrily personal weaknesses to power, as though I was deluded enough to believe that weakness has ever had any effect over strength. So, who do I think a leftist might be? Well, I'm starting to think that they're simply those who found their courage to act even if it's in the cause of their own personal interests. Someone who can deploy their own personal acts of anarchy and have a belief in and use democracy. Now usually, more than likely, when a dog is kicked, they bite. With all the injustices brought upon us, can no one summon the courage of a dog? Wasn't Pagalos saying, why are you mad? We all ate together. Not enough of a kick to ignite your hearts? What about Papandreou saying, hey, the money is there? No. What about having the ability to choose our leadership being taken away when Lucas Papademos was installed? And what about Tsipras being a communist while not being? What about him coming to the proletariat for permission to tell the European Union no, we giving him that permission, then him turning against us? Is that not enough? Well, what about Mitsotakis being a nationalist while not being? What about him promising to fix the agreement with our northern neighbor? What about him asking us to give him power so he could do such a thing? Then when he got the power, he told us all to go get fucked. Is that not enough of a kick? What about him? Instead of trying to unite and care for Greece, he spends most of his time trying to turn Greek against Greek with the use of words. And what about the idea that Greeks are not allowed to govern Greece and will not be till our great-grandchildren are able to do so? How many fucking kicks do you need to summon your courage? Can you not even muster the courage of a dog? And, of course, the answer is, of course not. Most can't even summon enough courage to properly identify their enemies. Oh, hey, one simple bit of advice before I continue. If you feel that most of your problems are due to those under you, you're being manipulated by those over you. Now then, just as I spoke on earlier about vulgar rage, using the proletarian as a pressure valve for your rage is weakness. Now, fucking granted, it is more energetic than writing a tweet or filming corruption or yelling your weaknesses to those who hold strength, but it is still promoting your weaknesses nevertheless. The true enemies aren't standing on the streets with you or across from you. The true enemies are sitting in offices surrounded by arms. They don't have street-side businesses or shaved heads wearing swastikas, and more than fucking anything, they are not your neighbor or your family member who just happens to disagree with an element or elements of your fucking political philosophy. They're in banks and corporations, laughing from their offices whenever they see us fighting each other because of misunderstandings, and usually misunderstandings that they promoted. If you don't rage righteously, if you don't kill beautifully the true enemies of humanity, you're not leftist, communist, anarchist, or even fucking Antifa. You're fucking clowns. Your court gestures for the amusement of the real bourgeoisie. Now, don't worry. I'm not here to incite or wage a communist revolution, and I especially wouldn't do such a thing here in Greece for a party like Kappa Kappa Epsilon to reap the benefits. And I do believe that they'd reap the benefits and forget about the working classes that they claim to champion. Like I said, I pretty much lost my faith in communism and politicians that wear the label communist, yet like Alexei Tsipras, soon forgetting communist ethics when being given governorship. Moreover, where the fuck are our victories? Now, I don't need to go back through history. I can stay here in our era. China is touted as many as communistic, but I ask, how can it be so when Marxist scholars and students are being arrested there? How can it be so when China's leader set himself up as leader for life? North Korea is touted as being the same, but I ask, how can it be called communist when leadership is passed through the Kim bloodline like royalty? And how is Cuba a communist country when little Tony, the grandson of the Revolution, is over here in Europe partying up with bourgeoisie society? Motherfucking Angola, the country where Che Guevara went to continue the revolution, has the audacity to fly an anarcho-communist flag while feudalistic families rule for the benefit of other bougie families, while the populace lives in squalor. The Soviet Union could have come close, but Lenin poisoned the water before it had any real chance to take off. Only two examples come to mind, that being Vietnam and Yugoslavia, although Vietnam more so because not enough communist discipline was installed for Yugoslavia to survive Tito's death. No. Actually, I can only see one victory, and that is the victory that even with all of our setbacks and losses and promoted hypocrisies, still, to this day, billions of people still call themselves communist. However, if communism remains only a product of the mind, a philosophy, if it's never put into action, is it a victory? So, what am I? What am I calling for? I'm just a dude. Well, yes, I'm a communist. I'm not only a communist. I'm a Christian. I'm a hedonist. I'm a husband, a son, a soldier, writer, painter, sculptor. Fuck, so many damn things. But most importantly, I am a man who thinks and loves freely, and a man who angers easily. And I'm just calling on other men to get angry and to use your anger. I'm asking you to develop some goddamn pride. Pride for yourselves and your families, your loved ones. Stop allowing yourselves to get kicked. Kicked because you think that it's right. Being kicked with the thought of suffering is good for the soul. And I also ask you to look onto those that you've traditionally called enemies and see your brothers and sisters. Hey, do you know the main reason why I use the Nazis as my example? I use them because I respect them. And when I say the Nazis, I don't mean Chancellor Adolf Hitler, that fucking dweeb, or any of the leadership of the party. I mean the people. The same people who are like us now. People who were called to fight because the bourgeoisie state called them to fight. People who were beaten and battered. People who lost everything, including their loved ones, and then their suffering really began. If there was no truth in the NSADP message, then their message would have fallen flat on deaf ears. Look at the Nazis. Look at the German people and see your brothers and sisters. Them, like us, were tortured by their governors because their governors couldn't admit their mistakes. For the same reason sanctions don't work, the Versailles Treaty only fueled the next war. The bourgeoisie victors wanted to punish Germany. However, the German bourgeoisie, being bougie, couldn't accept blame for anything, so therefore couldn't pay the price for anything. So, the bourgeoisie, being bougie, shifted the blame to the proletariat who paid the price. And that is the position we're in now. And not through war, but through economics. Cooking our books with the aid of Goldman Sachs to enter the Eurozone, and then once in the Eurozone, funneling funds into private and personal coffers has led us into a position not unlike that of the German people leading to World War II. We could have avoided the hardest brunt of the crisis if only our bourgeoisie leaders would have admitted their fault and returned misbegotten funds. But no. A bougie leader would rather be thrown into prison proclaiming innocence than walk free with their guilt known to the world. And this just led to compounding sins, crippling the proletariat for the fortification of the bougie lifestyle. As the Nazis did, look to our enemies. Look into the central banks and corporate offices. Look into our own parliament. Look there and see our enemies laughing at us as they feed themselves by our labors. And I hear you all, not just my comrades, but I hear the populace as a whole shouting to me, how could you not only as an anarchist, but just as a human being, hold the Nazis in any other light other than damning? And I would ask back to you, how could you not? They were not evil. Our brothers and sisters are not evil. They did exactly what any kick dog would do. They fought for themselves. No one sees themselves as the goddamn bad guys. No one forms a party based on murder, the extinction of whole peoples. No one forms a party by saying to the populace, I wish to oppress and enslave you for reasons. And this is also going to be the only time that I ever hold up the Nazis, the members of the NSADP, as an example. And I say that simply because no one knows who or what they were. Nazi now simply means bad guy, just as communist is for those who despise me, and how I was taught to regard the name fascist, but can no longer do. Democracy isn't the counter, the antithesis to communism. The United States didn't join World War II to fight the NSADP, and certainly not fascism or imperialism, since they adapted elements of both into their behavior. Just because you feel that one must make their way by the sweat of their brow doesn't make you a conservative, and just because you look for alternatives to that mindset doesn't mean you're a lazy libertine. Just because you sell your labors or goods, just because you take part in mercantilism, doesn't mean that you're a capitalist. And just because I have a degree of militancy, that doesn't mean that I'm a fascist. I'm actually developing my militant philosophy through my belief in democracy, in communism. The community is shouting out with a democratic majority, we have no faith in the political process, in our leaders. I set aside my pacifism for the greater good in serving the will of the populace. The populace wants revolt. Hey, I did, really, truly, I did try once with words. For years I wrote like the philosophers I mentioned before, many good, fine words, and got the same result. Hey, the vast majority of those who took the time to listen, they liked what they heard. But not to be disingenuous, I did get disagreements, but they were rare. No. The vast majority of reservations were with plausibility. I heard back mostly, hey, good ideas, but no way they'd ever work. No aspiring political personality wants to end corruption. They want power so that they can become corrupt themselves. And that's why the populace wants revolt. That's why I must set aside my pacifism. The people want radical changes, not more words, empty promises. People want to see someone fighting for what they believe in so they can believe in it themselves, to actually see someone put up or shut up. I said it earlier that I feel like that upcoming deed is being put upon me more forcibly as time goes by. Well, I'm sad to say now that I'm really not sure what deed this broken down old warhorse can do, but I can guarantee what I can do, I will do, and I'll do it with a clean, clear, and whole heart. Now, to my fellow brothers and sisters in uniform, I really don't want to see you on some future battlefield. I really don't. So I ask of you to do what I did and take a good look at who and what you serve. If you put on the uniform for the singular purpose of protecting the citizenry from torture and death from foreign invasion, yet they still face torture and death due to the neglectful ambivalence of their own ministers, is the service you provide of any real value? It is, but simply not to the citizenry, but to the bourgeoisie who you truly serve, since it is they who have deemed the citizenry as enemies. To those who wear the uniform for personal benefits, true members of the petty bourgeoisie, I'm sorry that I will see you on that future battlefield. Yeah, I'm not naive and believe that I can do what I will do without pushback. I know that you're out there, that you believe that not only is this the best system to ever exist, it's the best system that can ever exist. That you believe that the dream of Star Trek, the dream of many that Gene Roddenberry once said, in the future, there'll be no hunger or greed and all the children of the world will know how to read, can never come true. Yeah, I'm not naive and believe that you don't exist. I know that you do. And I am so very sorry that we couldn't come to an understanding. Perhaps in another world, in another life, we'll be able to review past misunderstandings. Hopefully, if we do, with clearer minds and bigger hearts. Just know, if it helps at all, that the people aren't my targets. The bourgeoisie and their manifestations are, and their support structures. Coming from my culture, in true Ivanhoe or Robin Hood zeal, I'll rob from the rich to give to the poor. Or, more correctly, in a country like Greece, where governments steal people's pensions, I'll simply give back to the people that which is theirs. And I hear you all, not just my comrades, but I hear you all shouting to me, "What? You don't demonize Nazis and now you address police as equals. What kind of anarchist are you?" Well, first of all, as I said, I'm the kind absent naivety. The one who knows that all states need some form of a policing structure. It's not that laws or enforcers of laws that are a problem. It's what laws and who enforces the laws. That's a problem. But the largest problem is laws for thee, not for me. That we have here parliamentary privilege shows the grotesque nature of law application. If laws protect, they protect the bourgeoisie, they molest the proletariat. If police protect, they protect the bourgeoisie, they harass the proletariat. And I hear you say to me now, respecting Nazis being understanding to police, you sound like a right-winger, which is usually said by right-wingers in leftist clothing. That's why I started this off with the question of what does it mean to be a leftist these days? Indeed, things are so fucking backwards, definitions of words have changed. For Americans, coming across this of course, what was once considered a right-wing gun-toting redneck, hunters are at the forefront of ecological conservatism. Those who call themselves feminists have taken over the roles of puritanical Christianity in demonizing sexuality. When my mother wore the label feminist, it was because she fought for sexual liberation, not sexual repression. My mother is my greatest influence when it comes to my hedonistic philosophy. In my early lessons into leftism, we occupied our minds with the big things. We're on a huge fucking space rock being hit daily with other fucking space rocks. Any given one will end any discussion about how you feel others should feel about how you feel about fucking genitalia. We, as communists, we never talked about anything as idiotic as Black Lives Matter. Since when? When has a black life ever mattered? Pure idiocy to waste brain matter on such a thought. In order for a black life to matter, life needs to matter. And in order for life to matter, it must have value. One simple glance will show that human life is the cheapest commodity that there is. People who call themselves leftists scream and yell hysterically to others their phobias, as though they think that another is unaware of their own fucking phobias. People who call themselves leftists even yell out to others their bigotries. Only the worst kind of fool would think that doing such a thing would heal another of their phobias or bigotries. But more than anything, what does it matter if someone has a phobia or holds a bigotry? Indeed, it stinks of, well, hell, more yelling of personal weaknesses and fears more than anything. I mean, God, people who fear people with fears and bigotries, damn, personally, I can't think of any more useless thought or feeling than being afraid of another's phobia. I mean, what would such a useless person be called anyway? A phobic phobe? When it comes to another's bigotries, the only thing that we need be concerned with is if those bigotries have a criminal ill effect on another. What we as leftists need to do is to make sure that people's phobias and bigotries are impotent to the well-being of others. If you wish to be, or you already think yourselves to be, social justice warriors, I suggest being an actual justice warrior and then letting social justice be the byproduct. If it is actually important for you to punch a fucking Nazi, then don't punch your brothers and sisters next to you. Go to Argentina or Brazil. Go to where the Nazi leadership is. Go to the place where Dr. Joseph Mengele was able to continue his work unmolested and left to die elderly and in peace, sipping drinks on the beach. If you don't do this, if you don't pick your targets well, if you don't rage righteously and kill beautifully, you're not any kind of a fucking warrior, you're a goddamn clown. A court gesture serving the true enemies of humanity. You're not communist, you're not anarchist, anti-fucking-fa leftist of any kind. You are truly part of the petty bourgeoisie. You are who you serve. Or better yet in this case, you are who you amuse. Remember, if you feel that your problems are because of those under you, you're being manipulated by those over you. Comrades, viva.